Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the incendiary report in the Mail on Sunday today that, according to the former chair of the Conservatives, the party has been actively covering up for a serial rapist for years. Now, what are the implications of these revelations, and might this at last light the Blue Touch paper to some real reforms? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So last year, during that brief period when some idiots let Liz Truss run the country, Jake Berry was made chair of the Conservative Party. Now, according to the Mail today, Berry said that upon becoming chair, he was made aware of basically a whole load of allegations about a certain MP. Now, the identity of the MP is a sort of open secret, but he cannot be legally named. So you either know who it is or you don't. Don't say. But it hardly matters. Hiding his identity is the tip of the iceberg on the cover-up, it would appear. Berry says he first became aware when he found out the Conservative Party had paid for private hospital treatment for one of the alleged victims. Now, as you read the article, it seems clear that Berry considered the MP in question to essentially be guilty. Now, obviously, the view of one MP, even a legally trained one, is no substitute for a court of law. But the impression Berry is given is that the party collective thinks that this unnamed MP is guilty, but they're covering. When Truss fell and Berry was replaced as party chair, it appears that he wrote a letter to the Met Police outlining his concerns that his own party were actively covering up, which allowed the alleged perpetrator to continue reoffending. He said that the matter, had been ongoing for 2 years, that up to 5 victims are involved, and Berry also wrote to the Speaker's office. Now, the article also refers to some of the allegations about sexual impropriety, including some illegal acts that Nadine Dorries has written about in her upcoming book. But I don't want to muddy the waters here. What I want to do is make the point I've made so often before. Political parties cannot be trusted to handle complaints of this nature, and certainly not as serious as this. At the very least, Berry is accusing his own party of withholding evidence of criminal offences. That's perverting the course of justice for the party of law and order there. Deputy leader of the party, Oliver Dowden, has said that the Tory party has zero tolerance for sexual misconduct. Well, as Starmer once said, something doesn't add up here. If what Berry is saying is true, then the party has an incredibly high tolerance for sexual misconduct of the most serious kinds. And if what Berry says is not true, then he has seriously defamed his party, and surely action would have to be taken against him. Because he's made very specific allegations against his own party. This isn't like the Nadine Dorries's, I once saw an MP do this, I once saw an MP do that. It's like, yeah, which MPs? Oh, I'm not telling you. No, Berry's saying exactly who is responsible. It's the party whips and leadership that preceded him, and it's the party whips and leadership that followed him. He's making very specific allegations against those people. We know who they are. We know who are the whips of the Tory party right now. We know who the party chair is right now. I would suggest if no action is taken against Berry, then the Conservatives are effectively saying that what he's said is broadly true. Besides, no party that allowed a known sex offender to become a deputy party whip can ever claim that they have a zero tolerance attitude to sexual misconduct. I mean, Chris Pincher, for goodness sake. They literally just lost a by-election last month because they tolerated it. And although the focus here is on the Tories, the same problems exist in politics in general. It's really obvious that the Tories have a far more serious problem than other parties. Far more serious. We can come up with various reasons why that might be. I would suggest the fact that the Conservative Party particularly appeals to very selfish people. But the root cause of these cover-ups, it's going to have one of two reasons to my mind. First, that those who manage the party structure, the whip's office, the chair, those people, the people for whom complaints would be managed, really don't have any empathy. There may be some who, should raise alarms that simply don't care about the victims. I think this is probably one factor which is essentially a Tory issue. But the second is the fear of reputational damage to the party. The motivation to cover up is huge because you fall into the greater good trap. If we deal with this as we should, it'll reflect badly on the party and it might cost us in the election. We don't like the behaviour, but we have to think of the greater good. The greater good fallacy has been the cause of quite a lot of wickedness in history. And it's why political parties should not manage these sorts of complaints. Don't get me wrong, there's no requirement for victims to go through the party process, and they really should not. They always have the option of going straight to the police. But I would suggest that it should be illegal for political parties, if they receive complaints of a criminal nature, to even attempt to deal with it entirely themselves. If they receive a complaint, should there be a legal requirement for them to advise the victim to tell the police and to support them in doing so? It's insane how these things keep happening. And yet we all focus on the individual case, isolated from the others. So you don't really see people asking, do you think we need to change the system here? Because it's always this focus on this individual case. Feels a little bit like mass shootings in America, doesn't it? The rest of the world looks on and asks, what are you doing? Why do you keep letting people buy these weapons? They don't need them. For any valid purpose, they don't need them. It looks mad. Well, I'm not sure there's really a different attitude here. How many times do we need to find out about things like this? Not just the offences, but the fact that a political party is sort of covered. How many before we say that it shouldn't carry on like this, there's no need for it to carry on like this, and actually change things? Never mind the Tories saying, oh, we should be tougher on these people or those people, all in the name of British values. What about being tougher on criminals in Westminster? What about that? Because I actually worry that just focusing on the Conservative Party problem gets people to think, well, it's their issue. It's always the Tories, isn't it? It's always the Tories. Their issue and they should deal with it. Well, it's not. They just hog the vast majority of the cases and seem to produce the worst offenders. But it's an institutional problem. Politics is institutionally biased in favour of sex offenders and against victims. We keep seeing that time and again. And given that this is an issue which almost exclusively affects women, but does affect some men, then it's an institutional bias against protecting the rights of basically over half the population. I cannot understand how there isn't a huge movement of MPs across the House demanding reforms here, especially after this latest case. Going back to Jake Berry, consider what he was really saying. Not only was the party covering up for the alleged perpetrator for 2 years, but in his opinion, the cover-up allowed him to carry on offending. Berry is very explicitly claiming that the Tory party isn't simply covering up for a crime, but acting as a willing accomplice to the further rapes which supposedly wouldn't have taken place if they'd taken their duty of care seriously. I say do something to take that duty of care from them to an extent. Whatever it needs to be. A legal duty to advise the victim to see the police. A legal duty to, as a matter of procedure, pass on allegations, even in anonymised form initially, to the police, even if only for information. Whatever needs to happen. I mean, how insane is it that a political party can even take it upon itself to handle a serious crime? I've been a teacher. If a school or college was in receipt of evidence of a serious crime, the very idea that they would try and deal with it themselves and that the police wouldn't be contacted was utterly unthinkable. I mean, Berry, when he sent that letter to the Met Police, why didn't they investigate the party for perverting the course of justice? Are you seriously telling me they just read the letter and go, oh, that's interesting, let's file that for later? Again, why are our most senior legislators held to lower legal standards than the rest of us? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.